into my lab system, and I'm going to demo a couple of the aspects of the RTS integration for you. Specifically, I'm going to demo pause and resume recording, start and stop recording, and data extraction. And then we'll come back and we'll talk about just some of the common that you might run into when you're actually implementing this in the field. All right, so let's go ahead. Okay, so we'll talk first about the real-time solution architecture. So the real are comprised. So with RTS, one of the main packages that is offered is desktop triggering. Desktop triggering is mainly focused with recording prevention for privacy control purposes. This is your pause and resumes of recordings, and also the recording invocation to be able to start and stop recordings based on certain actions that the desktop or the agent is performing on their desktop. Okay, the next package is called desktop tagging. So for desktop tagging, we're talking about collecting of data from the agent's desktop and integrating it into the NIM system. So this is your data extraction. This is the ability of RTS to actually extract data off of an application or multiple applications on the agent's desktop and to place it into Business Analyzer so it can be queried on. Okay, the next one is called Insight to Impact. This is focused mainly on real-time speech analytics, where the system can actually analyze the call as it is occurring and provide guidance feedback to that agent, depending on how that call is going, whether the customer is upset or the customer is wanting to cancel their account. And then, of course, RTS can be implemented separate from the NIM system, so it can be its own standalone system. And typically with the standalone integration, we're going to be working with what we call RTPO and RTAM, which is the real-time process optimization and real-time application monitoring. So this is where the RTS solution will monitor, for example, the applications that are being utilized on the agent's desktop. This is typical for a WFM environment, for example. And then one other component that I'd like to mention on here is something that's new that will be introduced with the next version of NIM, which is NIM 6.3. And that is going to be RTA, which is real-time authentication. So this is going to be using the voice biometrics feature. The system allows customers to authenticate based on their voice print rather than having to ask questions such as their mother's maiden name or the last word of social or the place you got married, for example. So today we're going to talk about the first two packages. This is the desktop triggering. Those are the two components that we will focus on in today's webinar. So moving forward, we'll talk about first the RTS architecture and some of the components that are specific to RTS. So the first component that is pretty important within the RTS architecture is called the real-time designer. So this is a piece of software that gets installed on a workstation or several workstations within a customer's environment. And these need to be installed on workstations that are going to mimic the setup of the workstations on the rest of the customer's environment. And essentially what we're going to use the designer for is to design the projects. This is what our consultants are going to come into. They're going to sit down and they're going to work with the customer to design out the project exactly how they want to have it done. We're going to tell, in the project design, we're actually going to tell the system when a pause command should be sent to the NIM system and when the resume command should be sent, for example. As those projects are developed, they're going to be published to the real-time server. And basically when we say publish, that's just going to be uploaded. That's where they're going to be stored, is on this real-time server. The real-time server consists of a database server. Typically, can be typically SQL database. And it also can integrate with the customer's LDAP environment as well. And the real-time client software, which is installed similarly to the screen agent software, is going to be installed on each of the agent desktops. And as those agents log into the system, the real-time client is going to reach out to the real-time server and download whichever solution or solutions are appropriate for that particular client. Okay, so for the purposes of the webinar this morning, we're not going to dive deeply into the real-time designer, the solutions, the real-time server, the database, or the LDAP integration themselves. Today we're going to focus mainly on the real-time client and how that integrates in with the NIM system. Okay, so the architecture with the integration into NIM. So over here in the top right-hand corner, we see that we have a normal NIM integration system. We've got our loggers, database server, playback server, applications, interaction center, all the normal typical components that are involved in a 4.1 system. One component here that I'd like to point out is this ITI Connect server. So this is the component that is going to be installed and configured on the NIM system and is going to allow us to integrate with the rest of the RTS solution, which are those real-time clients. So as we can see here, the real-time clients are going to communicate directly to the ITI Connect, and this communication is going to be facilitated by a component that we refer to as the ITI bridge. So each of the real-time clients that need to integrate to NIM, meaning that we're going to extract data from their desktop, or they're going to actually invoke recordings or pause and resume recordings, we have to also install this ITI bridge, which will allow the real-time client to communicate to the ITI Connect server. Okay, so in terms of installing and configuring this component, this ITI Connect server, so this component is installed just like any other component with the NIM system. We will run the SRT on that component and be able to test all of the functionality, test the minimum requirements for the ITI Connect server. Once we do the testing on it, it's going to be installed by the NDM, and any update packs or hot fixes that are released for the ITI Connect will also be pushed out via the NDM. And then once we get it installed, we're going to go into the system administrator, and we're actually going to configure that ITI Connect server. Okay, so just showing from the SRT, we see a screenshot here. We see that we have Insight to Impact Connect, the ITI Connect. So we'll select that checkbox if that component is going to be installed. When we run the NDM, we can see that the software for the ITI Connect is going to be installed via the NDM. And then once it's completed, if we go into System Administrator, under the Desktop Analytics branch, we will see that our ITI Connect servers are going to be defined under the Desktop Analytics branch. Okay, so once we're ready to configure the ITI Connect server, we'll just add a new server just like any other component within System Administrator. We're going to give it a name, and we will give it the host name or IP address for the location. As with always, with the best practice within NIM is to use the host name versus an IP address. Okay, the ports that appear here on the screen are going to be, by default, this is what the values will be. They can be changed if it's necessary in your environment for whatever reason. If a customer requires a different ports, those can be adjusted, but again, that should be approved by your SME or your DSA. We have a checkbox here that shows real-time mode. And real-time mode actually is going to create, or I should say adjust the behavior with the ITI Connect server in terms of data extraction. So the real-time mode typically it should not be checked by default. And by the way, this is also in the NIM 4.1 system as it is currently today, either UP26 or 45, either one. By default, real-time mode should not be selected. It should only be selected if you get approval from your DSA or your solution experts. And what this is going to do is real-time mode will actually have the ITI Connect server insert the extraction data values into the database about every 5 minutes after the interaction ends. And what this does is this actually creates an additional load on the database that could cause some performance-related issues. So that's why you would need approval from a DSA to select the real-time mode option. If this checkbox is not selected, the ITI Connect server does the insertions are actually completed by a SQL job that is running every 30 minutes. It's set to run by default every 30 minutes. That can be adjusted. However, again, it should be only adjusted if you're getting approval from your solution architects. If you're running in this offline mode, after an interaction ends, it will take up to 30 minutes for the extracted data to be inserted in the database and to be available in Business Analyzer for queries. If you have real-time mode selected, then the data extraction will occur about 5 minutes after an interaction ends. Yeah. Okay, so moving on. Once we have defined our ITI Connect server, the next step is to enable privacy control if your customer is going to be doing pause and resume and recording invocations. And this is done under the Applications branch in System Administrator under Configuration and under the General tab. All right, so as I was mentioning, you do have to enable privacy control within the application server. And I just want to make a note, by the way, that this screenshot here is from a system running 4.1 Update Pack 26. So in the current Update Pack 26 versions, or 25 or 24, in these versions, privacy control checkbox is located under the Applications branch, under the Configurations, and within the General tab. Now, the reason that I like to make a note of that is because in this next screenshot, this is a screenshot from an Update Pack 45 4.1 system. And the privacy control checkbox has been, first of all, been renamed to match the current naming convention, which is desktop triggering. So it's now. And also, two, this has been moved out of the applications branch, and now it has been moved down under the security branch under application security. So it's just something to make a note when you're installing and configuring the ITI Connect server. First of all, you have to create the server in System Administrator, choose the host name or the FTDN for that particular location of that server, and then go into either the application branch or under the security branch to enable desktop triggering or privacy control, depending on which version that you're running with. Okay, this slide is just showing a screenshot that once the ITI Connect server is installed, you can see that it is just running as a service. Unfortunately, the naming convention here is still RTI Connect. It hasn't been changed to ITI Connect. The location for the log files and the configuration files for the ITI Connect server are going to be in the same location as most of the other components, which is the D program files and all systems. We'll have an RTI Connect folder and then a bin folder. And underneath the bin folder, the configuration file, which is where we can change the log reporting levels for the ITI Connect. Unfortunately, with this component, we do have to change the configuration file to enable debug. And then our log files are going to be located under a separate folder. And we have our RTI Connect log file, and we also have the system framework log file. When I do the demo on the system a little bit later, you will see the log file location. We'll actually bring up the logs, and we'll see live some of the successful messages that will be sent between the real-time client and the ITI Connect server. Okay, just showing this a screenshot from the Monitor and the Nice Business Analyzer applications. So once you select the checkbox for the privacy control or to enable desktop triggering, you will see now in the Monitor application a privacy control on media column. And this icon right here will display on any calls that are currently in a paused state. And we'll see that when we actually do our demo a little bit later. And then in the Business Analyzer application, we'll see the privacy control on media column here as well. And any calls that have been paused at any time throughout the interaction, this icon will appear to indicate that a pause and resume was performed at least once during the interaction. And then also, too, when a call is played back, we have the privacy control icon will appear in the top right-hand corner of the media player as well to indicate that a call was paused. And I don't know if you can see it too well on the screenshot here, but you can see, let me see if I can get this right. You can see kind of this blocked out section here where it's kind of goes from a grayed out to a whited out section of the media player. This will indicate that this is the paused section of the playback. Okay, one other important thing to remember is in User Administrator, when you create the clients, the Windows username that is used by that particular real-time client needs to be configured within User Administrator. For the exact same reason that we have to configure the OS login for the screen agents in order to do screen recording. So this Windows username does have to match. forward with the desktop triggering. So remember, with desktop triggering, we're talking about two main areas here. One of them, of course, is the recording prevention, which is your pause and resume of recordings. So pause and resume recordings, we do support this in total recording environments and also in selective recording environments. This is supported with VoIP loggers, TDM loggers, and screen loggers, so we can do any or all of those type of loggers environments. Your start and stop of interactions and start and stop of recordings. This is mainly going to be seen within selective recording environments. However, you could also see it in a total environment. Let's say, for example, you're doing a voice recording for the environment, and you want to use RTS to invoke screen recordings. So you can definitely use the start and stop recording functionality to invoke screen recordings on your system based on certain actions that the real-time client performs. And just like with the recording prevention, recording invocation supports all types of loggers as well. Okay, so it's important to note here that there is an option. This is a screenshot of the system tray from the real-time client desktop. When you set up your solution to do a pause and resume of recordings or to start and stop recordings, you can actually have a little call-out that the pause and resume or the start and stop recording message was sent successfully from the real-time client to the ITI Connect server. Now, this is an option that you can choose to turn on or off. You do have customer environments out there where you don't want the agent to know when they're being recorded or what is being recorded or what has caused their recording to be paused. So in those types of environments, you can turn this call out off. Typically, when the solution is first designed, you're going to have this turned on just to make sure that as you're going through the testing phases, that all of your actions on the real-time client are going to be performing as you expect them to. Okay, something that was added new within Update Pack 45, 46, and 47 was the, first of all, let me go back. This message pop-up that appears on the real-time client is only an indication that the start or stop command was sent successfully from the real-time client to the ITI Connect server. It is not an indication that the pause was actually successful. This is something that created a little bit of an issue, and in Update Pack 45, R&D added basically a feedback mechanism from the Interaction Center to go back to the ITI Connect server to indicate whether or not the pause and resume was successful. And in case of a failure, the system will actually pop up a failure message on the real-time client to indicate that there was a failure to pause or resume. Okay, so just basically showing what's happening in terms of privacy control. As we were talking about the normal process, the customers are going to call into your customer support center. They're going to be talking with an agent regarding their account, maybe an issue with their account, overcharge, for example. And what's going to happen is our system is going to record that interaction. We're going to record the voice. We're going to record the screen, however the customer has their system set up. And when the agent gets to the point where they're going to ask for sensitive information, whether this is an account number or a social security number, anything along those lines, when they perform an action on their desktop to indicate that they are about to receive sensitive information, then that real-time client is going to send that pause command up to the NIM system through the ITI Connect server, and then the recording will be paused, both the screen and the voice, and now the agent is able to have the customer say out loud their account information or their social security information, and the NICE system will not record it. And then once the agent clicks out of the field or proceeds on into their next step within their procedures, the real-time client is going to send the resume command up to the NIM system, and we will start recording again. So that's a good example of using privacy control. Okay, so just looking at the technical process flow for how it's occurring there. So we have our system here. We've got our real-time clients. We have our ITI Connect server, the monitor, application, and IC on the NIM side. So typically what happens first of all is the real-time client has to send that pause and resume command, and that's going to be sent via the ITI Bridge software. to the ITI Connect server. Okay, so the second flow in this process here, this slide kind of shows just the differences between the 4.1 system, which is shown here in red, and a 3.5 system, which is shown here in green. So if we're talking about a 3.5 system, the ITI Connect server receives the pause and resume request, and you will see that the ITI Connect server is going to delegate that pause request directly to the interaction center. So it's going to go to the call server and basically insert a pause command into the call server, or a resume command into the call server. That was changed in 4.1. So in 4.1, the resume request is actually going to be delegated from the ITI Connect directly to the monitor application. So this is something that's important to note. On a 4.1 system, the monitor server application does need to be up and running for these pause and resume requests to be successful. Okay, so the next step, once that pause resume request is received, that will go through the monitor server. The monitor server is just going to delegate it the exact same way as you would just a report on demand. It's going to go directly to the interaction center. Now this slide here is showing a screenshot or showing the process flow from an update path 45 system, in which case the IC will reply back to the monitor server, which will reply back to the RTI Connect server, which will reply back to the real-time clients to indicate successful or failure of that pause or resume command. So it's just feedback to the real-time client to indicate that yes, you did send the pause request, and yes, we did successfully pause the recording. And again, you'll only get the failure message if we actually failed to pause the recording. Okay, and then of course the pause resume request, when the resume request is received, it will come from the real-time client directly to the ITI Connect server. And then again, it will be delegated to the monitor application in 4.1 or to the IC in 3.5. And then of course we will get the feedback back to the real-time client to indicate that resume was successful. So with desktop tagging, we're talking about two specific types here. The first one is data extraction. So this is where we're going to extract data from the agent's desktop, from their CRM application, or from their email, for example. We will extract the customer name, for example. We could extract the size of a sales deal, for example. Or if a customer is calling in and they're canceling their subscription or canceling an account, we can have the system extract the reason for that cancellation so it can be reported on and reviewed. And the other side of desktop tagging is to do what we call calls tagging, which is to basically flag interactions for example, if an agent takes a call from what we would consider to be a platinum level customer, or interactions that have high dollar values tied to them. And again, using the cancellation example, if a customer is canceling their account, somebody might want to review that, maybe a customer retention department, for example. Okay, so the process flow for the desktop tagging is quite a bit simpler, I would say. So the once the real-time client extracts the data, there's going to be a notification along with the data extraction is going to be sent from the real-time client to the ITI Connect server via the ITI bridge. And then the ITI Connect server is going to insert that extraction directly into the database, and specifically we're inserting into the NICE ScreenSense database. So we are using that NICE ScreenSense database, and we just aren't changing the name of it. It's still just NICE ScreenSense. And of course, in the third part of this flow here is showing that it's inserted either within 5 minutes. If real-time mode is selected, the ITI Connect server will perform the insertion within 5 minutes, and it has to be 5 minutes after the call is completed, not when the data is extracted. So that's an important thing to remember. If a call is 20 minutes long, once that 20 minutes comes and the end of the call is actually received, it'll be within 25 minutes that we will see the insertion of the data extraction. And then if we're using real-time mode, if we're using offline mode, which is not using real-time, then that extracted data will be inserted into the database via a SQL job that runs once every 30 minutes. And specifically, the name of that job, I believe, is the Nice Screen Sense Linkage Notification, if I remember correctly. It's a quick summary of both of those flows that we were talking about. So for desktop tagging, your flow is going to be from the real-time client to the ITI Connect server, and the extracted data and the tagging is going to be inserted directly to the database. And specifically, we're inserting into Nice Screen Sense. For the desktop triggering, we're going to go from the client to the ITI Connect server through the application server. That's where our lookup of our user IDs is going to occur. And also, too, this is we're utilizing the monitor application for the pause and zoom. That will pass through to the interaction center and the IC server from there. Okay, it's also important to note from the Sentinel application, under reports, we have our Agent Center report. And now that we have the RTS integration, we don't only show on this report the status of the screen agents, but we also show the status of the desktop analytics as well. So desktop analytics is indicating that the real-time client is actually either connected, it's either online or offline. So you can see that in the screenshot here. So if you're running a project and you're installing RTS and you're integrating it with NIM, I would say that this is an important step to make sure you show the customer that they can run this report on a regular basis, run it daily, they can run it hourly, just to check and make sure that their agents that are performing privacy control or they're receiving sensitive information are actually up and connected so that their recordings are being paused and resumed successfully. Okay, so let's go ahead and move into a quick live demo of all of these different functions here. So specifically, I'm going to show you guys the desktop triggering and desktop tagging for data extraction, pause and zoom, start and stop. And what I want to show you guys is the log files for the real-time client, the ITI Connect server logs, and I'm going to show you those live. So as I perform a pause or a zoom, you'll see the successful messages being sent from the log files. I want to show you the monitor application, the business analyzer. For functional tester, I'll show you what the pause looks like to the logger. And then also the media player, just showing that the icon appears for those privacy control calls. All right, so let me my system here. Okay, so what I've done is I've set up actually two systems. The first system I'm going to show you is actually configured as a total recording solution, so it's going to automatically record voice and screen for every interaction that I make. So what I'll do, let me jump over first to my real-time client machine. So this is my machine that I'm using as what would mimic a customer's desktop, an agent's desktop. I've opened up the real-time client log file to show you guys in Beartail what the messages will look like as the pauses and resumes are sent from the real-time client. And just to show you guys too where those log files are located, so if you navigate to the C users, this particular path right here, I can let me zoom in on it just a little bit in case anyone wants to make a note of where that is located. So also in this directory here, we have not only the logs for the real-time client, but I've also got my real-time client configuration file. So this is the configuration file where if I was to be installing a solution or to be testing things out from a PSE standpoint, I could open up that config file and make changes to the log levels, changes to turning those callouts on and off, for example, so that would be pretty easy to change there. If I make any changes to that configuration, it's important to note I just need to shut down the client, restart the client again for those changes to take effect. Now currently on this system, I don't have the real-time client running, so I'm going to go ahead and launch the real-time client. And you can see from the logs that it's going to start the session. Okay, and once it is completed and it's actually downloaded solution, you'll see in the bottom corner of the screen, I have this real-time client icon to indicate that the real-time client is running. This is something you can turn on or turn off, just depending on what you want your agents to see. You don't want them to see that a separate application is running on their system. You can turn that icon off so that it does not display. And as part of the solution, as part of the guided ITP that was downloaded by this client, this little toolbar menu appears at the top of the screen. That's just something that is specific to the guided ITP. Of course, your solutions, they can be designed to do whatever you want them to do. They can pop up menus, they can appear with call-out messages. Now, if I click on the quick menu button here, you'll see that I have the couple of options that we saw in the previous screenshots for desktop triggering, for pause and resume, and for desktop tagging. So I'll go ahead and open up the desktop triggering. You will see I have all the buttons for pause, resume, start, stop, and the start interaction, stop interaction as well. So being that this is a total recording solution, I've got it set up to automatically record voice and screen for every interaction that I make. What I want to do, and let me show you guys as well. This particular client desktop, I am logged in with the user account Nice Admin. So if I go to my NIM system, under User Administrator, you can see that I have Nice Admin configured for my OS login. Okay, so let me come back to my monitor application, and I'm going to go ahead and start a test call with this agent. Okay, so I have a live call going. So coming back to my agent, you can see now that my agent is on the phone. We've got a recording for voice and screen that is occurring at this moment. You can also see I've got the privacy control on media column already displayed in my system. So now if I go back to my client, I'm going to press the button for pause recording. This would be similar to performing an action on the desktop that would invoke a pause. So I'll click the pause recording, and I'll freeze the screen for just a moment. You can see my call-out message appeared because I do have those enabled. Remember, this is an update pack 26 system, so even if I did have a failure for the pause, I would not see that appear in the system because I'm not running the right update pack. Message for pause recording. If we look at the log file, if I move this down just a little bit, you can see that the pause recording was successfully sent. If I go back to my NIM system, you'll see now that the record icon for the voice on screen has disappeared, and now I see the icon to indicate that I am in a paused state at this moment. Okay, just to show what this looks like from a functional tester standpoint, if I look at the channel statuses, you can see here as well that under the record column that we have SOD entered as the status for that channel. SOD indicates stop on demand. So it's just a functionality for the to be able to pause that particular channel. So currently, even though I see activity still coming to the line, the logger is actually not recording it. Okay, so now let's go back to my real-time client, and I'm going to resume recording. So again, that the resume callout appears on the screen. You can also see that that resume recording request was successfully sent from the log files. And if I go back to the NIM system, you can see that the recording is now occurring again. And if we go into functional tester, we can see that the channel has been changed back to the recording status. So now let me show you what it looks like once we end this call and we look for the call in Business Analyzer. So I'll go back to my NIM system now. The call has ended, the recording is stopped, and if I go to Business Analyzer and run a query for that particular call, you can see I have my privacy control on media appears with the icon to indicate that a pause and resume was performed on the system. And remember that a pause resume can be done several times or multiple times throughout any interaction. I believe we currently support up to 20 pause and resumes in a single interaction. And I can play the call, And you can see that I have on the screen here, I've got the icon to indicate that a pause was performed as the call is playing back. You can see on the screen, you can see where the pause actually starts. One other thing that I like to point out is when you're setting up your queries, you do this analyzer to actually query only for calls that had privacy control performed. So if I was to go into my queries or into the definition for my query, under the desktop analytics section of the business analyzer, actually I'm sorry, that's the under the interactions profile, you see I have a checkbox for privacy control. So my customer can actually set up queries that will only show them calls that were paused or resumed at some point during the call. Okay, so the next system I show you is similarly, I have a real-time client desktop. I have my NIM system. But this time, when I make a recording or when I make a test call, you can see that my agent shows that he's on a call. However, we're not actually doing a recording because I have no rules that are set up. My system is only set up for selective recording. Apologize there, a little bit of a cough. All right, so let me, at this particular point, I'm not going to use test calls to invoke my recordings. I strictly want to start and stop recordings and start and stop interactions for the purposes of data extraction. So let me show you guys on the system here. I've got my Beartail set up. This time I have my log opened up for the ITI Connect server. Similarly, on the desktop side, I've got my log file set up for the real-time client logs. So let me go ahead and launch my real-time client. And just as before, we're going to download the guided ITP. I'll get my toolbar menu that will appear. And I'm going to start first with the start-stop interactions. So you can see as of right now, my agent is not on the phone. There is no interaction that is occurring. So from the client side, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to start with the start interaction. And what this does is actually inject an interaction into the call server. It basically shows the call server that I'm on an interaction at that moment. What I've done is I've clicked Start Interaction, and I don't know if you saw it here on the log file for the real-time client, the interaction was sent successfully. You'll notice there is no call-out message to indicate that the start interaction was successfully sent. If I jump to my NIM server, you can see now that my agent appears in monitor as if they were on a call, even though they're really not. All we've done is we've injected an interaction into the call server. And now at this point, now that I have an interaction occurring, I can choose to start and stop recordings. I can start a recording, do pause, resume. I can stop a recording again. Or I can simply have started the interaction just for the purpose of doing a data extraction. So I've started the interaction in the system. You can see that there is no recording request invoked in the system here. And if I switch over to my log files, you can actually see from the real-time client logs that the start interaction was received. And I've actually set up color coding on the Beartail here so that we can see the different messages appearing. So now that I have an interaction on my system, I can now do a start recording. So you can see the start recording request is sent, and we get a call-out message for that one. So we do not get a call-out for the start interaction, we only get callouts for start recording and stop recording. Okay, so if I jump back to my NIM system, you can see that we have the start recording request is received by the ITIC. And if I go to my monitor application, you can see that it shows that a recording request has been invoked. And if I click on that interaction, you can actually see the initiator appears on the system as SEA. This is the old recording initiator for screen syncs from way back in the day, for those of you that might remember. So even though it shows that it's invoking a screen recording and invoking a voice recording, of course the voice recording is going to fail because my agent is actually not on a call. However, I will actually be recording screen at this point. Okay, if I go back to my client, what I can do from here is I can actually click on my data extraction link. And if I click extract data, you'll see that message is sent from the real-time client. And if I go back to the NIM system, you can see that that notification was received by the ITIC. Okay, so now that I've done that, I've done a start recording, I've started my interaction. So now what I can do is go ahead and stop the recording. So I get my call-out message to indicate that the recording will stop. Go back to my NIM system and confirm that the stop recording request was received by the ITIC. Go to the NIM system, and we do see that the recording will stop. And then at this point, I can go back to my client and actually stop the interaction. Because remember, the interaction does have to be stopped before the extracted data can be correlated with that particular call in the system. So when I go back to the NIM system, you can see my agent no longer has an open call. And if I go to Business Analyzer and run a query for this particular call, we can see that the interaction is here. However, we didn't do any pause resumes on that particular interaction, so we don't have the icon. And you can see that I've added the column here, which is the desktop analytics text value, because that's what we are injecting from that ITP test. So right now it's currently blank. If I was to actually sit here for the next 5 minutes and wait, we would see after 5 minutes, we would see that data gets correlated and inserted into the database. And I've run a couple to show you what it looks like when a test call with data extraction actually works. So you can see that the test text that we pull from the system, from the ITP, is strictly just the wording data extraction works. Okay? All right, so let's talk about just the some of the quick troubleshooting steps that you can perform. These are some of the common scenarios that you might run into. One thing that's good to note is that the guided ITP, if you do the installation, where the ITP is installed as part of the real-time client, some of these messages, when you run the real-time client and the solution gets downloaded, you'll see some of these messages appear on the window. So if there's any problems, for example, connecting to the ITI Connect server, let me bring up my pointer real quick. So for example here, the real-time client RAM, the solution was downloaded from the real-time server. However, we couldn't connect to the real-time client. So one of the common things here is, first of all, make sure that the real-time, the ITI Connect service is up and running. It's also important to note, too, that when you initially configure the ITI Connect server and you check the box for privacy control or to enable desktop triggering, you do have to restart the RTI Connect service, and you also have to restart system administrator. So sometimes that's a step that's forgotten when you're initially configuring the system, and then you're not able to figure out why your real-time client will not connect to the ITI Connect service. Okay, next common issue that we might run into is that there's an error actually making an association to one of the users defined within the NIM user administrator. So in this case here, just make sure that your OS login is actually entered correctly within user administrator, that it's the same account that's being used by the real-time client when they log in. And it's also important to note, too, that just like with Screen Agent, you don't want to have more than one user within NIM user administrator defined with the same OS login, because that will cause some issues with being able to look up that user ID with the agent setup. Okay, next troubleshooting scenario you might run into is with regards to the NIM application license. So this is an example of the summary file showing that desktop analytics has been enabled within the application and what features of desktop analytics has been enabled. It's important to note that the desktop analytics is still worded desktop analytics, even though it's RTS or desktop triggering, desktop tagging. Okay, and just I ran into recently, I had a business partner that went through one of my RTS courses, and when he got done with the course, he went back to his lab and attempted to set up the RTS system and integrate it with their NIM system just for testing purposes. He wasn't able to get it working. The ITI Connect server would not, the designer and the real-time client applications would not make connection to the ITI Connect. And just through a couple of emails back and forth, we found out that his application's license file did not enable desktop analytics. So that could be a common scenario that would cause some issues there. Okay, another way that you can verify the NIM license if you don't have the summary, you can actually go into the real-time, the ITI Connect log file, stop and restart the service, and you'll see at startup that the ITI Connect goes out and checks the log file to see what has been enabled. So that's another way to actually verify what the license is showing. Okay, another common scenario that you might run into is that the privacy control checkbox has not been selected within System Administrator. If this is not selected, you will not see the privacy control on media column appear in the monitor application or in Business Analyzer. And then, of course, if this is not selected, then pauses and resumes will also not work. Okay, and then, of course, if the ITP solution runs into any other issues or scenarios, it's going to give you the locations of the log files for the real-time client, and as well as the ITI Connect server, so that you can take a look at those logs to determine what might be the issue. Or comments or anything, please. So thank you, everybody. Have a great day, and take care.